Welcome, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meet the Members, the new podcast of Empower Africa. Before I move on to presenting my distinguished guest, my name is Shai Bernstein, VP of Biz Development and Partnerships at Empower Africa. For those of you who are hearing us for the first time, Empower Africa is a business community with a mission to drive investment, trade, and job creation in Africa. We believe that business is the best way to create sustainable and scalable solutions. We're big believers of trade over aid. And we have three verticals in the company. The first is the Empower Africa Business Network, which is a platform, a business platform, connecting and centralizing all the relevant stakeholders doing business in Africa. The second are events and trade missions, which now, of course, with COVID, we have amazing virtual networking events, which you'll hear more about soon. And the third is consulting and project facilitation. Today with me, we have a very distinguished member, Shelli Zargary, Marketing Content and Strategy Manager at GenCell. Shelli, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Shai. It's a great pleasure to be with you and to meet more members of the community. I'm really excited about this.
Fantastic. It's interesting. I remember that the first time that we met and started interacting was a while back when we really started with a focus on agriculture. And we knew that energy is one of the biggest sectors that we need to get involved in. And we took the staged approach and slowly but surely we're, opening up and being engaged with more and more companies and governments regarding different sectors. And energy, of course, is the next one that we're tackling. Very excited about that. As many people know, there's so many places in the world today, specifically in Africa, where you have hundreds of millions of people who are literally living in the dark, let alone other, essential energy functions, right? Whether it's in hospitals and many other functions, which we'll get to in a minute when we discuss GenCell. And yeah, I'm excited to have you. You're the first member that's talking about energy on our podcast, so I'm excited.
That's cool. That
Yeah, why don't you
starting
start by?
starting off, we have lots of positive energy here on the line. So that's where let's share that positive energy with our friends and colleagues in Africa. That would be a great thing. Absolutely, the huge opportunity there, and definitely great demand that would be fantastic to be able to contribute more of our technology and our knowledge to improve quality of life for people everywhere, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where so many people are indeed, and so many women indeed are, unfortunately still not achieving their highest potential. And whatever we can do to support and improve their quality of life will be a great mission.
Wow, wow, well said. That's beautiful, 100%, and definitely the positive energy is here, and we're working
Absolutely.
off it. It's
In
great.
fact, if
Kelly,
you
why don't you
recall,
start by?
we met first at an Our Crowd summit in Jerusalem, and I think that Our Crowd is a great example of, as you talked about, how business really, can be the smoothing factor that enables progress and advancement through, each person trying to better his own family's life and becoming part of a wider community, and the many investors at Our Crowd who are indeed supporting so many good technologies. And so I was definitely excited to see Empower Africa getting involved with Our Crowd, and I'm sure that many others at Our Crowd should get involved with Empower Africa and with GenCell. Would only improve their own pockets and help Africa and help the world.
100%. Amen. 100%. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, so I was born in the United States, in the state of Delaware. So I'm very proud to tell you my mother was one of the earliest supporters of Biden in the state of Delaware,
Wow.
and far before he became such an important national figure. So that was exciting to see this closing of this loop. I grew up in Delaware, and I was actually a member of Young Judea, the youth movement that's connected with Hadassah Women's Organization. And through that organization, I came to Israel in the early '80s, and then I made Aliyah in 1986. I've been in Israel since then. I studied Russian studies in Soviet Union. I spent a semester in the former Soviet Union in the beautiful city of St. Petersburg, which was at the time Leningrad.
Wow.
And then I needed to find something to do in Israel that was a little bit more mercurial. So I moved to the software industry, but I knew that I wanted to do something that was more, connected to my values. And so, luckily, in around a certain period, I guess it was around 2017, I started working on a voluntary cleantech newsletter, and then I moved into the solar industry for a short time. And in 2019, I was very pleased to be recruited by GenCell Energy, which is Israel's pioneering blue and white fuel cell developer and manufacturer. In fact, that's again closing a loop to some extent, because GenCell really was formed by three founders who really took advantage of the brilliant know-how and scientific knowledge of several immigrants from the former Soviet Union who were involved in the Mir space program, and some others from Apollo. And they brought their knowledge of fuel cells to Israel with them. And this group of talented scientists came to GenCell and started working on adapting the alkaline fuel cell technology that was used for spacecraft and making it mainstream for Earth. So I'm really excited to share the values of the alkaline fuel cells. They're the highest efficient fuel cells in the world. And our projects became commercial in 2016 when we started selling
Wow.
selling fuel cells for backup power for mission critical facilities. And we're working on many interesting projects, one of which is to take advantage of our patented ammonia cracker. Well, let me go back a little bit and say that GenCell's alkaline fuel cells depend, of course, on hydrogen. Maybe we want to explain what a fuel cell is for some of our members who might not know. A fuel cell is
Right.
very similar to a battery, but the difference being that a battery has a limited charge, right? And after which time you either have to recharge it or get rid of it. A fuel
Right.
cell, unlike a battery, can it continues to produce energy for as long as you have fuel available. And in the case of our alkaline fuel cells and most fuel cells, this fuel is hydrogen. So our existing commercial systems are using hydrogen gas, and from which they take the hydrogen and combine it with oxygen inside the generator using a liquid electrolyte, and produce clean energy, carbon-free, emission-free energy, with the only byproduct being clean water that is actually drinkable, and heat, which
Wow.
can be used also for heating applications. So the fuel cell has a lot of advantages. It's extremely reliable, because it's a chemical process. It basically will go on no matter what. So it's very, very hardy and withstands a very broad range of temperatures, high humidity, high altitudes, and even our system is even certified against earthquakes. So while solar and wind are very important sources of renewable energy for the world, and certainly will be, and we don't see ourselves competing with them. The opposite, we complement them, because some
Right.
hours of the day when solar energy isn't available, if it's dark or there's no wind, you need to have something that's immediately reliable that can kick in and provide energy on demand. And that's what a fuel cell can do. So the problem that we found was that our uh, fuel, this hydrogen, is in fact available everywhere, but the problem is it's very challenging to transport and store hydrogen, because of course it's very diffuse. It's a very as a gas, and in order to make it more dense, you either have to pressurize that gas, which obviously you're investing energy to do that, or you have to reduce it to a very low cryogenic temperature of minus 450 to liquefy it. And there again, you're investing energy. So if your goal is to produce maximum amount of energy, why do you know, it's very self-defeating to have to invest a lot of energy to get the hydrogen. So the brilliant scientists here at GenCell applied themselves to this problem and came up with a solution. And the solution is a patented ammonia cracker, because ammonia, which is, by the way, the most common chemical produced on Earth, 180 million tons of, ammonia are produced each year. The chemicals are used for fertilizers and coolants and refrigerating agents and many other uses. Ammonia is liquid at room temperature and doesn't need to be pressurized. And so it's much, and it's hydrogen dense. In fact, you have among the highest density of hydrogen in liquid ammonia, more
Right.
so than you would have in hydrogen gas. So
Right. Can I interrupt you for a second, Shelly?
absolutely.
This is fascinating, and it's not the first time that I've heard it. Yet I still feel sometimes, a little bit lost. And more importantly, for the people who are listening, right? Can we just backtrack 2 sentences, right, and just explain again to people who aren't familiar with it, right? First time I heard about, the fuels and the cells and the ammonia and the hydrogen, in my uneducated energy mind, right, without knowing that much about the sector, I remember first thinking, wait a second, are these, poisonous gas? Are these polluting, right? Is it clean, and so on? And you're mentioning here a few things that are just mind-boggling in terms of explaining the actual technology and how clean it actually is and how reliable it is. Can you backtrack again and explain, just for all our listeners here, um,
Sure.
the concept of GenCell and the brilliance of the technology?
Sure, it's quite, and yeah, fuel cells as an idea. In other words, a fuel cell is an electrochemical generator. So inside this chamber or stack, what's it called, you take hydrogen, which you could get from hydrogen gas, or in the case of the ammonia, we extract the hydrogen molecules from liquid ammonia, and it
Right.
comes into the chamber, and we take oxygen from ambient air. There's another patent involved there because we need very clean oxygen. Instead of taking expensive purified oxygen, we have our own carbon dioxide scrubber, which scrubs the air to take only the oxygen. So you have hydrogen and oxygen coming into the chamber. And inside the chamber, we have a liquid electrolyte, which is not a poisonous material. It's called KOH. It's a kind of phosphate. And in the presence of that phosphate, the ions, the hydrogen and oxygen will combine together, and the electrons, which are the energy, they will be separated and go off through, and from the fuel cell we send them out, out in a power cord, right, to provide electricity, and the hydrogen and oxygen molecules that combined will become water, and we simply collect the water, and the heat which
Right.
is diffused from the reaction is is also can either dissipate or be used for heating, like a radiator. So it's silent. There's no vibrations, no noise, no odor, um, no fumes of any kind, and it's completely safe and completely clean, and again, no carbon emissions. So this
Right.
is a very clean
Wow.
process. So the
No carbon
issue,
emissions.
right, and the other issue, that most fuel cells require noble metals like platinum or palladium. And so if platinum today costs about $26,000 a kilogram, our scientists replaced the platinum in the fuel cell with nickel, which is $22 a kilogram.
Wow.
So this is a huge cost savings that reduced the capex of the fuel cell. And we do believe that as the need for fuel cells grows, those most of the fuel cells that require the noble metals are going to cause a huge price increase in the cost of those metals, and then the cost of those fuel cells will rise, consequently, and our fuel cells will have a competitive advantage in that regard. So
Right.
basically, nevertheless, this technology is still quite expensive compared to, solar energy or lithium ion or something. And that's why GenCell is looking to expand our production, because by reaching a higher economy of scale, we can reduce the cost of our units and have the units used in many places. So basically, if we're talking about the African market, we're very interested in meeting the needs of off-grid energy. There are so many communities in sub-Saharan Africa where transmitting energy by poles and wires is very
Right.
expensive. It's a huge investment. And if you use a fuel cell, a remote fuel cell, and just position it where you need it, then you really can save a lot of money invested in a power grid. But what you do need is the fuel to get the fuel cell running.
Right.
So in Africa, that's
Right.
our. So as I said, we recognize that it's hard to get hydrogen, but ammonia is far more available. So basically, with our off-grid unit, we're going to be able to take a tank of 12 tons of liquid ammonia, which is very safe because you can put the ammonia inside of a double. Basically, ammonia, if you get it on your hands, it'll burn you, right? So what we do is we put the tank of ammonia inside a double tank that's inside of water. And then if the ammonia
Water. Right.
leaks, it leaks into the water, and then it
It
basically just
diffuses.
dissolves, and
Right.
then you don't have any
Right.
issues. So if you have this tank
But
of
there's no
ammonia,
security. Right.
so you have the tank of
Yeah. Sorry.
ammonia
Same. Yeah.
next to the
Go
fuel
ahead. Go ahead.
cell, and the fuel cell can then produce energy for a year with no maintenance and no servicing, and just work. So
Wow.
that we're really excited to
Wow.
get to. We really believe that it can do a lot of good in Africa. To keep vaccines refrigerated, to work in medical facilities, and
Right.
we're
Hospitals.
starting
Yeah.
by looking at places where power is really critical.
Right. Wow, fantastic. So again, you're saying that once you have the portable tanks, you can put it in rural areas, thus decreasing, the cost of otherwise, transmitting the energy there. But then you also took care of the security aspect of ammonia by putting it in the water tank. So there's no hazard here.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. In
wow. So,
fact, let me tell you that our tagline is "Say No to Diesel." Because in rural areas of Africa and Southeast Asia and many places where the power grid is not stable, those places are really dependent on diesel generators. And a diesel generator, it's not my job to say bad things about other technologies, but we do know that fossil fuels emit a great deal of carbon dioxide. So diesel generators, they both pollute the soil and the air where they are being used, and make a lot of noise and a lot of odor, and they're being banned in many places. And another issue when you mentioned security is that diesel generators and the diesel fuel, and in fact other generators that work on methanol, for example, the
right.
big problem in Africa is that they're stolen. People steal the fuel, they steal the generators, they steal solar panels. It's very difficult.
Right.
We work for telecom, a lot of places in Africa where you have to have a remote telecom tower to provide a network for communications.
Right.
Um,
Right.
they can't seem to keep them powered because the power generators are stolen. But our fuel cells are really theft averse. So because they're very quite heavy, and nobody's going to
Right.
buy
12
one on
tons,
the.
you see.
Yeah, and nobody's going to buy the. Well, no, the ammonia is the 12-ton. The fuel cell itself is not 12 ton, but it is heavy, and I don't think
Right.
anybody would really be able to sell it, in the vegetable market as they could sell the diesel
Right.
fuel.
As
So
opposed to diesel, right.
right.
Yeah.
So that's another advantage for Africa that we see as very important. We know, for example, like we've read that in South Africa, MTN suffers, huge losses on the stolen power devices and power fuel. And we think that our fuel cell could really resolve this problem.
Right. Wow. So again, let me just recap and reiterate that so people everyone understands. You're saying there are of course all these antennas, solar antennas, which as everybody knows is just key, right? It's like the lifeline for so many people, rightfully so.
Of course.
I mean, could you imagine how our life would be now without any cellular, mobile phones and internet? So you're saying you have rural areas, you have the antenna has to be powered by certain energy. And once we know that a big problem across the world is that people can steal those diesel powered antennas, and so your solution makes it not only cheaper but also safer, and you're essentially eliminating the theft threat. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
That's what I said. Yeah. In other
Wow,
words, for the
fantastic.
I'm talking about base stations, right? Telecom towers, the base stations that usually they put a diesel powered generator there, and they usually have a fence around it to secure it, and then they have a team that comes to maintain it and add fuel. Once it, and they have to be generators in order to work properly. They have to be carefully maintained, and they have to run it once a month at least to make sure that it
Right,
keeps running properly. So all of those things can be avoided by using a fuel cell instead. Um,
right.
and I
Wow.
do want to tell you, I'm excited, very excited about being part of the Empower Africa community to find out if we can find partners in Africa that can help us with, obtaining affordable ammonia and hydrogen to run our systems because um, without the fuel cell is not, going to succeed. And we believe that I'm sure as most of the people listening are, reading about the hydrogen economy and how the world is moving to a hydrogen economy, and there's a great interest in producing clean hydrogen, green hydrogen around the world, which is
Yeah.
usually produced from renewable energy. In Africa, there's a huge abundance, surplus of renewable energy, renewable wind, and renewable solar that could be used to produce green hydrogen and green ammonia. So we really are looking for the partners that will work with us. We're also part of an organization called the African Hydrogen Partnership, which is coming together to grow this important economy in Africa. So we hope that as that organization grows, there will be a greater availability of hydrogen and ammonia that will enable us um, to make the fuel cells available in more places in
Right.
Africa.
Wow. Wow, fantastic, fantastic. And by the way, on that note, it's a good time to also mention that we have an event coming up next week on the 24th, The Power of Energy, right? Hosted by
Right.
Empower Africa. And we have fantastic speakers. And of course, GenCell is one of them. And Gil will be presenting the company, the product, and we'll talk about that. A very interesting panel, both with solar, energy, and many more. So stay tuned and visit our website if you want any information about the event. And again, the whole concept of the events of the Empower Africa community is not only the webinar aspect where you're going to hear GenCell and other companies present themselves and their services, but rather actual, virtual networking where you can come and meet relevant business partners, to expand your business and to grow your business. So,
Exactly. So we're really looking
answering
forward to
answering
meeting potential partners there. But you have another event you mentioned. I wondered if you want to tell your listeners about that event as well.
100% on the 22nd. We have a very special event, which I am honored to take part of, organizing, called Extraordinary Women, Extraordinary Entrepreneurs. And it came from a few, sent from a few places. First is we know that, in 2021, um, there's a big need to highlight more and emphasize more the importance of showing younger girls different role models, and how successful they are and how there's no limit and how there's no glass ceiling and whatnot for anyone for that matter, gender, race, right, religion, whatever it is. And so what's beautiful is that really today you're hearing more and more about these amazing entrepreneurs, men and women and so on. But this month is Women's History Month, and last week was International Women's Day, and that's why we felt it was extremely appropriate to have this event. And we have tremendous speakers, really three inspiring speakers. So we of course invite you all to join that as well. Thank you, Shelly, for reminding me about that. And also, I'd love to hear about the community that you mentioned that you're working on, because I think it's extremely relevant, of course, to this. Please.
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, first of all, I think it's really wonderful that you guys are sponsoring that event. And I think that having women's leadership in the energy sector is extremely important. And now, during the time of COVID, we've seen that women leaders have really played a very meaningful role in many communities and countries where, where their style of leadership has really been extremely successful. And, we recognize in the energy sector that gender diversity and inclusion is extremely important, and especially also for women in color. So, actually, I mentioned to you that in addition to being involved with GenCell, over the last few years, I've had the great fortune to be part of the Lean In network. I'm sure you know who Sheryl Sandberg is, the COO of Facebook, who quite tragically lost her first husband. And when he passed away, she really saw a need to give back to the world and to the community. And the way that she saw was most relevant was through getting involved with helping women to lean in, or to push themselves beyond this glass ceiling that you mentioned, and especially in the world of software and the world of STEM, engineering and math, that women have not really felt. Many women didn't recognize that they had the capacity to push forward in those sectors. And so the things that we really need to give women to move forward in those sectors which are more available to men, is networking and mentoring, two very important skills that were not so available for women. And so Sheryl Sandberg set up a platform, the leanin.org platform, for sponsoring women networking and women mentoring. And not long after that platform was put together, some women within the energy sector did a spin off and grew the organization called Lean In Energy for women in the energy sector. So when I got involved in GenCell in the summer of 2019, Sheryl Sandberg came to Israel, and she gave a great fireside chat here. It was also her 50th birthday, so she deserved a big celebration.
Wow.
And it was really exciting to be part of that fireside chat and to hear her amazing role model and everything she does to support women and women's leadership. And at that time, I felt that the best way to get involved was to start a community for women in clean energy. So we set it up as
Wow.
a Women in Clean Energy Circle on the Lean In platform, and it became also a community on the Lean In Energy Network. And since we started the project in the summer of 2019, we've had several webinars involving some amazingly talented women around the world. And most recently, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to meet some of the directors of U.S. Aid, who are running the Power Africa and Women in Power Africa networks in sub-Saharan Africa, who are dedicated to expanding the role of women leaders in the energy sector in Africa. And we've set up now a mentoring program from our community, so that we'll be mentoring women from Women in Power Africa in our small group mentoring
Wow.
program via Lean In, working
Fantastic.
together with Power Africa and with Lean In Energy and with another organization, an amazing organization called Sustainable Energy for All. So I'm working with a group of women from Europe, from Africa, from members in and several who went through the difficult crisis in Houston recently with the terrible power outages and
Right.
cold front that they suffered, and we've come together to pool our talents and energies to push women ahead to contribute their knowledge and skills to the energy sector, and
Amazing.
especially in Africa.
Wow. Wow, Shelly, amazing. Thank you so much. Extremely informative and inspiring. Really, the community that you mentioned, really amazing. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask, the guest to share a certain quote or saying that he or she kind of resonate with, and to just explain why. So please share with us.
Sure. Well, I'll say it in Hebrew. My motto is a well-known phrase. If I'm not mistaken, it's from actually, maybe I'll tell it, and then you can tell me if you know who actually said it first, because I don't. But my favorite phrase is "Pitom kamadam baboker umargish ki hu am umatchil lelechet." It means suddenly a person, I'll say a person, wakes up, realizes that he's a member of a people, he's a member of a community, and this is what gives him the energy to move forward and to be part of. So for me,
Yeah.
being part of the Israel community and part of the women's community, and I feel that community is the spirit that people need to really foster their capacities, and that's what gives me the energy to go each day.
Wow. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you. By the way, it was written by the poet Amir Gilboa. And like you're saying, I mean, just the realization that we're part of something bigger than us, that we're a part of something that we have similar views, similar, aspirations, right? There's so much more common ground with the people around us than we think. And I always like to try and think of the things that unify us as opposed to, the things that we may think differently on. And I think that the power of community, which is, of course, what we're very big on in Empower Africa in terms of the community aspect, is exactly like you're mentioning, the beautiful community that you built and that you're part of. It's all about the communities of people who share specific ideas, specific values, and how we work together as a community, right? And the communities can get bigger and bigger. How do we work together with a synergy, right? And the
Exactly.
sky's the limit of things that we can do together.
Amazing. Thank you
So,
so much, Shai.
Shelly,
I'm so happy to be a part of the Empower Africa community, and I'm really would like to welcome anybody, women and men, anybody that has an interest in learning more about either our GenCell technologies or about lean in, or getting involved in energy for Africa. Anything. Well, anybody is welcome to contact me through LinkedIn or through email, or however. I'm sure that through the membership of Empower Africa.
wonderful, definitely, and of course, everybody will be seeing this and will be sharing it on social media and so on. So again, guys, don't miss it on March 24th, the Power of Energy event, Empower Africa, hosting GenCell and more. Stay tuned to more events on Empower Africa. Shelly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Shai.
Stay safe and healthy.
Fantastic.
Take
Thank you
care.
all. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.